Coco is an acclaimed concert pianist. She has performed all around the world, most notably at Carnegie Hall and Kerner Hall. She started learning the piano at a very young age and studied at the Phil and Ellie Taylor Academy program with the RCM. And she continued this musical journey at Juilliard. And and now she has also written various books and is an accomplished author, and along with her great music skills. And yeah, so we look forward to learning more about your music journey.
So I started playing the piano when I was 5.5. Um, and I was studying at the Royal Conservatory of Music, just taking piano lessons from the age of 6. And then I joined the academy when I was 9 and stayed there until I was 15. And then I, like Lauren said, I moved to New York City to attend Juilliard while I was also finishing grades 11 and 12. And then I graduated from the pre-college program at Juilliard, and now I'm currently doing my final year as a grad student at Yale School of Music. And then I'm also starting at Yale College in September to do my bachelor's degree in probably film studies. So very exciting.
Oh, well, that is great to hear. So we just have a few questions. So first of all, how old were you when you did your first concert, and what was this experience like?
Oh God. I guess I mean like I was with a teacher for like a few months that was not at the RCM. And I guess a lot of piano teachers will usually have like a studio concert for all of the students just to play and take turns getting up on stage, and their parents are in the audience. And then, it's lots of fun. I don't remember anything from that one. I do remember when I started at the conservatory, I played, I think there was a piece called like the Cuckoo Clock or something. There's a video of it on YouTube somewhere. I don't really remember like feeling nervous or anything. I just got up on stage and I played it. And I remember like the next time I did a concert, there were people asking like a 6-year-old, oh, how do you not feel nervous on stage? And I was just like, just do it, as if that was helpful in any way. I would not stand by that advice now, but yeah, it was a lot of fun. I really, really enjoyed performing, especially at a young age. So yeah, that's what I remember from it.
Well, that is truly an interesting experience. Um, Next, what got you into music? You started at such a young age, so was it more like fraternal, or was it just like a calling?
Yeah, it was definitely kind of both. I remember when my parents bought me like a toy keyboard. My mom has always loved the piano. She never played herself. I think she picked up the accordion briefly, like I recently learned that. But she always wanted to play the piano. And so she bought like a lot of piano toys for me as a baby, and I really, really loved them. And then I remember I we had a family friend who came over with a girl who was, I think, a year or two older than me, and she I think we went to her house and she played the piano, and everyone was like, wow, that's so amazing. So I was like, wait, I want that kind of attention. So I went home and then like I started learning the piano, but it ended up being a lot, like for a lot more than just like the attention. I really loved music and just, playing and yeah, and sharing music as well.
Would you say like this also got you into like performance, or did you like do you prefer like practicing versus performing? Yes.
I don't know many people who prefer practicing over performing. I am definitely not one of them. I guess the thing is like when it's kind of an inevitable relationship when you practice a lot and you're proud of what you play and you want to share it with people. I think that's kind of natural for musicians to want to perform in concerts and share music with others. And of course, lots of people love to listen to music and to go to concerts and hear you play as well. So yeah, I think the way I go about practicing and the way I approach it is the end goal of being able to perform and, giving my best on stage.
Oh, so speaking of practicing, how much like do you practice on average every day? And how did like that change from like a younger age, like through high school, through university and such?
Yeah, you guys probably don't want to know this. Okay, so I used to practice, sorry, when I was a little younger, it was somewhere between 3 to 4 hours a day. And then I remember the most I ever practiced was 6 hours every single day, without fail, like during the summer. I think when I was like maybe 14 or 15, something like that. And then I started practicing a little bit less when I went to Juilliard, just because the way I approached practicing changed a lot, like technically and structurally, because I switched teachers and a lot of stuff was changing. And then now I definitely don't practice anywhere near as much as I used to. Part of that is just how busy Yale is. The classes are very demanding and there's a lot of work. And also, I unfortunately, I went to the doctors yesterday and I found out I have some kind of like rare tendonitis in my shoulder and neck. So I have to kind of take a break right now. But yeah, I definitely wish I could practice more, but life is busy, so you got to do with what you've got.
Do you have like any advice for people like balancing or practicing with like schoolwork?
Oh yeah, I struggled with that so much when I was in school, and now it's getting a little bit better. One of the biggest things I need to tell you guys right now that I really wish I could have told myself when I was in high school is, please, for the love of God, get enough sleep. Like, you should all be okay, so I'm also taking like cognitive science, and there is so much sleep research. Like, you guys have to get 7 to 9 hours of sleep every single day, okay? Like, I remember when I was in school, I was like so proud. I was like, last night I slept like only like 5 hours and I feel fine. It's like, no, you're not fine. Just like, please, please, please. That has been my number one priority in school, as like, especially during like exam season. Um, you really think, I guess you kind of think that it doesn't make as much of an impact as it does until you experience what it's like to get a full 8 hours of sleep every night. You are so much more productive. Your mood is so much better. Like, I guess you're just a little more positive, and it's easier to focus. And that makes like a huge difference in the long run, rather than like if you had just, I remember I used to stay up really late and like do homework and stuff and finish up stuff that I couldn't do because I had like classes at RCM all day or something like that. And I would be like kind of dozing off sometimes while I was doing my work, and it just wasn't anywhere near as efficient as it would have been if I'd gotten enough sleep. And so on that note, basically, the more productive you are, because you are energized, and you're eating well, which I hope you guys are. I like, it's been kind of a struggle for me because I live in an apartment on my own, and have to like cook for myself. So just like getting things done faster and more like quality wise, it's also better, just gives you more space to do other things as well. And then another thing that I've kind of realized over time is that, some days you'll want to do, like, let's say one day for me, I want to work on my books, and I want to write. I have inspiration and fuel to write. What I'll do is like I'll spend most of the day writing and then try to set aside some time for piano. And then another day, where I might be kind of stuck on the writing, I'll go and practice more. So it's kind of like this give and take relationship where you don't necessarily feel like you have to have like a concrete, like, oh, I have to do homework for, 3 hours today or 5 hours or whatever, and then I have to practice for this amount of time. Like, I feel like that kind of sometimes causes frustration, and like maybe even while you're doing one task, you're like really wishing you could be doing something else. Sometimes it's better to just, like allow yourself that freedom and flexibility to do it so that, you don't burn yourself out.
Okay, well, that is some very good advice that I think we can all learn from. S On that note, is there anything like you would have wanted to do, like play another instrument, if it wouldn't have been the piano or writing? What would you have done?
Oh, I mean, I always wanted to play the saxophone, but I did that at Northern, and I played in the jazz band with Miss Lomp, and that was a lot of fun. I guess one of the things I wish I had done more of is like clubs, because my extracurriculars were basically all music, I think. I would have loved to be on some more sports teams. Like, I think when I went to New York, when I moved to New York, I started doing like more of those sports teams, and it just like also um, feeling like active and fit was also really important for my health, and I saw like a really big improvement in my health overall. And yeah, I in college there's not, unless you like actively seek it out, you don't get to have like gym class or phys ed. And I mean, if you're the kind of person who hates that stuff, then I guess that's nice for you. But I really miss that, and I wish that I could have done some more of that when I was in high school. Just like do as many extracurriculars. If there's something that like captures your interest, like seriously, just go for it. Don't regret like not having gone for it once you're out of high school and that opportunity isn't there anymore.
Okay, thank you. You are most like notably known for your classical music and your pieces. Do you also like the other genres as well, or is it mainly just classical?
No, I love jazz. I really, really, really love playing jazz. I used to do a lot of improvising, not so much anymore, but I mean, like, there's so much good music out there. When I study, I always listen to like lo-fi hip hop playlists, just that kind of chill stuff. And yeah, and I listen to a lot more pop now than I used to. But like classical is still my main thing. Yeah.
Do you have like a favorite composer, a favorite piece that like really like touches you?
Yeah, Rachmaninoff Piano Concerto Number 3. Number 2 used to be my favorite, but number 3 actually, now that I listen to it, is like so, so good. I can't, I don't want to swear here, but if I could, I would. Basically, I started learning it in the summer, and it's just, I thought it would lose some of its magic, like if I started to learn it, but it's just like even more special now. I always say that like if there was one piece that could be like played at my funeral, it would definitely be that one. And then I'd have like my ashes like blasted out of a confetti cannon while like the climax and the third movement happens or something like that. So yeah, it's a really good piece. If you haven't listened to it, highly recommend it.
Yeah, Rachmaninoff is such a great composer. Um, Backstage, what do you feel? How is it? Are you nervous? Do you have any rituals that you go through?
Oh yeah, a lot. So I guess it I feel like sometimes you're very, very nervous and you feel like you're going to throw up. And I think the more you prepare beforehand, and I don't mean just like practicing as many hours as you can, it's also like a question of mental practice, I guess. Sometimes I remember I would like the night before I would look at my music, like the score, and look at it and close my eyes and think about it and like envision how I would hear it in my head, and also like just like finger work without actually being at my instrument. That helped a lot to just like solidify any possible weaknesses in the foundations, kind of, I guess. Um, And then, the next day I would usually feel a lot better. Slow practice is also really, really helpful. And then once the day comes, I usually would try to eat something in the morning, even if I felt like, especially when it came to competitions, um, like I would be in a totally different time zone. The food would be weird. Like, I wouldn't be used to anything. I probably jet lagged also. But I would try to get something down. And then um, one of the things I used to do is like take these really forceful breaths. So I would inhale really deeply and then exhale, but kind of like it, like, I don't really know how to describe it, but basically you just exhale really, 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 really slowly and like clench your like chest kind of. Um, and then, it would cause my heart rate to slow down a lot. And then I would just feel a lot calmer. Um, Another thing I started doing recently, especially when I was doing auditions, is the night before I would record myself, like a voice memo of myself hyping myself up and be like, okay, Coco, you got this. And then I would also list off a bunch of things that I should like remember while I'm playing. So like, for example, oh, make sure your pedal in this so and so in section is like not too heavy or something, or you're remembering the dynamics here or something like that. And then I would like crack a few jokes to make myself feel better. And then the next day, right before I went on stage, I would listen to it, and it would make me laugh. It would make me feel a lot more relaxed. And yeah, it just went a lot better. It was a very strange technique that I recommended to a few friends. And it seems to be working really well. Like, it's the thing that I did before my audition at Yale School of Music and also Juilliard and the Peabody Conservatory. And the auditions just went so much smoother than like probably the smoothest auditions I've ever had. So I would recommend that.
Well, thank you for those lovely tips and the advice. So, how has performing changed for you now with COVID? Um, is it like, how is it? How do you feel about it? And how has it like changed with practicing and stuff like that?
Yeah, it's been really difficult. My piano professor lives in Baltimore because he's a professor at Peabody, but he also comes to Yale to teach like half of his students. So he can't come into Connecticut because of like the restrictions in the US right now. So I've had like all of my lessons with him since last March or something over Zoom. And that's, I think having like a few lessons over Zoom for music and especially like the piano because, um, there's such a huge, like a extended register and the dynamics are very variant. It can be difficult. Like a few lessons is fine, but having them for over almost like a year now has been really, really difficult for basically everyone in his studio. Um, I guess I think I don't know if you guys know this, but a bunch of Yale School of Music students like petitioned or something or sent like some letters to Zoom asking them to change their music audio settings. So there are several settings under audio that you can change, like um enable like high fidelity music mode and echo cancellation and turning on original sound, which really, really, really help. And I guess performance wise, we haven't really been able to do any performances, which has really, really sucked. The most we do is like chamber music in person. So like with a violinist or like I'm currently in a piano duo right now. So that's like stuff we can do in person. And then at the end of the semester, we'll go to like the big hall and we'll do like a recording with just like a few other random groups in the audience. For senior recitals and that kind of thing, it's like all streaming right now. So in a way, it depends if you're the kind of person that like feeds off the energy of the audience. So I'm that kind of person. So having one person in the audience kind of sucks for me, but at the same time it makes listening to concerts really, really accessible, because people who aren't in the city or like in a different time zone or like halfway across the world can just use a link and listen to you perform. So that's also really, really nice.
Yeah, that's true. I think although like we aren't able to perform live, at least we're able to like connect a wider population through music, which is always nice. So on that note, do you prefer like playing as a solo performer or with other people, orchestras? What is your ideal performance?
Uh, Playing Rachmaninoff Concerto Number 3 with an orchestra probably. I do love playing solo, but playing with other musicians is always so, so fun, and especially with an orchestra, like that's just yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Well, that's great. You have collaborated with many famous pianists and musicians. Do you have like an experience that really you connect with, or that really sticks with you to this day?
Yeah, so many. I guess one of the big ones was like going to Germany to do like the Lang Lang International Music Camp. That was with I think like like a dozen or so other musicians my age, and we went for a week and we had lessons and coachings, and we performed together, and we traveled around and performed at schools and concert halls. And then like that was definitely like Lang Lang has always, he's like kind of just always a big we're all big admirers of him as pianists. And another performance I had was with Emanuel. He's a multi-Grammy award winning pianist and probably the nicest human being that has ever existed in the history of humanity. He is honestly like he's like a guardian angel basically. He's so, so kind and so caring, and he has an amazing memory. Like I remember I was hanging out with him backstage like a while ago, and well, like before COVID, and then some like random dude walked in and was like, oh hi, like I came to your concert, 15 or so years ago in this specific city or whatever. And he's like, oh my god, yeah, you're the guy whose wife had like a fall in the shower or something, like, which is terrible, but also like so, so impressive, right? Like I can barely remember, if you introduce yourself to me and I look at your face and we have a conversation for like 5 minutes, like during that conversation I will probably forget your name, and like I swear to god I'm not doing it on purpose, but anyway. So yeah, he's amazing, and he is such an amazing musician as well. If you go listen, he's done a lot of collaborations with Yo-Yo, um and also Itzhak Perlman, the violinist, if you guys know him. They were an amazing trio, and they play like some amazing, him and Yo-Yo play amazing duets as well. You can definitely find them on YouTube. He has like such a beautiful sound. It's just like a great reflection of his inner persona and personality. So yeah.
Well, we'll make sure to look into those pieces. So do you have any advice for young musicians who are trying to make it in the music industry?
Yeah, so yeah, it's definitely hard, and COVID has not made it any easier. Um, I think one of the things is, of course, like you have to be very proud of like all of the things you've already accomplished, um and also be very, very open to like being flexible and also listening to other musicians and appreciating other artists. I think I've seen like a few approaches to, I guess, like becoming a concert musician from different schools. Some of them will be like they'll lock themselves in a practice room for 8 hours a day and just like bang it out on the piano. and then go and compete, and whether or not that goes well, they're just going to go do competition after competition, and that's how they try to make it. And then I've met a lot of other musicians who, they really thrive being in an environment with other like-minded artists and people who just want to discuss music and study and also share, and they tend to last a lot longer in the industry, if that makes sense.
Yes, yes, it does. Thank you. Um, so how so being in the music industry, is it like cutthroat or like especially now through COVID, would you say that it is feasible, or is it nice to have like authorship and like writing your own books? Is that like complementing to the music?
So I think it really depends on a lot of different factors, like some of them being your geographical location. Like in the USA, there's a lot of really amazing pianists, whereas in like the UK, there's not so many, but that gives a lot of more opportunities to the people in the UK, which is nice. And the attitude toward classical music is very different in Europe versus North America, and also China. Like they are, investing so much money in the classical music industry. They had like a competition recently where like the prize money was over $1 million or something like that. It was like really, really, really incredible. And also just I think it was a really great way to kind of declare almost how proud they are of classical music and how much they're willing to invest in it and basically, I guess, cherish it. I think in terms of I think it's always nice to have something to do on the side, even if it's not like career related. Um, like I was saying earlier about those musicians that tend to last a lot longer. They are not like so just totally zoned in on piano or classical music or a specific instrument. That's like not their life doesn't revolve around that. They are able to develop further and enhance their musical abilities and performance skills through life experience and basically living. And they have a lot of they have hobbies, they have people in their lives that they spend a lot of time with and that kind of thing. I guess it also depends on how like dedicated you are to a specific like if you know for sure 100% that that's what you want to do, like you should absolutely go for it. And you'll meet challenges and setbacks and obstacles, but like hopefully your determination and your devotion to whatever you're doing will like propel you and like just keep you from giving up. um my situation is kind of where I love music, but I also love doing a lot of other things. So I love writing and I love fiction, and I also love film and TV, and I love neuroscience and cog sci, and also sports and cooking and like all of these other things. So rather than like confine myself and restrain myself from pursuing those things and like regretting it later, I'm trying to find like a balance where I just pursue what my it sounds cheesy, like what my heart wants me to. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's definitely important to attain that like state of balance. And yeah. Have you ever thought about composing, or do you compose?
I used to do a little bit of composition. I wrote like a string quartet that was basically like a sacrificial ritual where the first violinist, the cellist, and the violist. Oh no, no, sorry. The second violinist, the violist, and the cellist sacrificed the first violinist because she was always getting like the melodies and that kind of thing. So they killed her off, and then they played the piece again without her. That was pretty funny. But other than that, I haven't done a ton of composing. there are a lot of people who can do it way better than I can, and I prefer to just like put my efforts into other things.
Yes, composing is definitely challenging, but also playing the music is a lot more fun too.
Yeah,
Um,
I think composing is definitely a skill that everyone should like try out, and it helps you understand and analyze the music you play better for sure. Um, yeah, it's just like just like improvising. I think composing and improvising is something that all musicians should, do for fun at least.
it's definitely it's like good to apply your music theory knowledge to your pieces and such, and through composing. Now I'm moving on to questions that students have submitted to ask you. So the first question is, what is one characteristic that has helped you achieve your success in music and writing?
Oh, that's a good question. I guess maybe optimism. It's it's really hard to succeed when you've got a pessimistic view of, something you're trying to accomplish before you've even started it. I used to have this motto where it was like, hope for the best but expect the worst. So like basically like set your goals high, but also don't you don't want to disappoint yourself, which I think is not like I think it makes sense, but also kind of has a pessimistic tone in and of itself, which is kind of ironic. But yeah, I think optimism is really important, determination, of course, and yeah, there's like so many things, but I'll just answer that like that to keep it short.
Okay, thank you. We have a next question. Did you have to use your own piano or the university's piano when you were practicing?
Uh, Currently, I go to the School of Music to practice. I have a piano at home, but I definitely don't have one in my dorm room. The rest of the people in this building would kill me if I did. I do have a keyboard that I can plug headphones into, but it's like not that great. So I just go to the school to practice. It's only like a 6-minute walk away. When I was at Juilliard, I also definitely did not have a piano in my flat. So just went to Juilliard to practice. Yeah, I miss my piano at home though.
Do you have like a favorite model or brand?
So I'm partial to Bechstein because that's the piano I have at home. It's a baby grand. It's a German make, and it's got such a wonderful, bright, clear tone. I mean, Steinway is kind of the standard. I There's a lot of people who love Shigeru Kawai. So Kawai makes like they're like normal pianos, which are not so great. And then they also make one called the Shigeru Kawai, and then that one is very, very, very expensive. And a lot of top musicians in the industry like swear by their pianos. Yeah, and they're also very, very nice.
Yeah, there's definitely a difference playing on like a great piano versus like an average piano.
Yeah, actually, now that I think about it, the Kerner Hall has a Hamburg Steinway. That is the best piano I've ever played in my whole life. It is so beautiful. It is such a good piano. Yeah.
What about the Yamahas? Like at the RCM, they have like a lot of them, but I guess for practicing purposes, like are there particular pianos that you prefer to use for like different things?
Yeah, I also really enjoy playing on Yamahas. They have some really, really great pianos. I think it doesn't matter to me so much about like the make of the piano or like what model it is, but like what sound it makes. So even, companies will make like two of the exact same models of the piano, but they will have completely different sounds, like whether that's because of like the wood, like the particular tree that the piano came from or something like that. um Pianos can have very, very different tones. Some of them, like the action is also really important. And by that, I mean like when you press the key down, like it will have a different responses. So you can make the key like heavier or lighter. And so that like when you play, it either comes up right away or like a little slower, or like that kind of technical stuff. I prefer lighter, brighter pianos, but with like a really good bass. So, you can really crunch that out like when it's necessary.
Oh, well, thank you for that. Um, how far in advance did you know you were going to attend Juilliard? Or if you knew, or when did you start thinking about it?
Oh, you mean like audition or like actually go to the school?
Um, the question here is ambivalent, but
I can
feel
answer
free
both.
to.
Okay. So I auditioned, I think in February or March. That's usually when audition season is for music schools. And then I found out in probably like in April or May or something like that, that I had gotten in. And so we moved like over the summer, I think in like the end of August, and school started in September. I've always wanted to audition at Juilliard, like since I was really young. Like I didn't remember this, but I think my parents found like some like school article project that I had to do when I was in second grade. Where it was like, oh, where do you want to be in 10 years or something? And I was like, oh, I want to be studying at the Juilliard school. So it was kind of inevitable that I would go and audition there. I didn't know if I was gonna get in, obviously, but it's always been a dream of mine. So
Oh, that's really inspiring to hear. The next question is, how important was learning music theory in your career as a pianist, whether it was making your own pieces or reciting others?
I think music theory is a very, very important skill to have. First of all, like especially at the rudimentary level, when you're looking at all of those Italian terms, like the long list of Italian terms, that ends up being really, really important because there are a lot of time. I mean, composers use them, right? So that's why we have to learn them. Um, it's very, very hard to interpret music through the composer's perspective if you don't know all of what the words mean that they're writing down, or the symbols and that kind of thing. And then in terms of harmony, I hated harmony. I did like at the RCM, I did rudiments 1, 2, harmony 3, 4, 5, counterpoint, and analysis. And that was a very, very long, like, I don't know, 7 years or something. But it was very, very important. Counterpoint, not so much unless you're going to become a composer or you want to specialize in Bach. But harmony, like understanding the way harmonies move, and it's kind of like the theory that you have to know the rules in order to break them. So when composers do that kind of thing, how to interpret their music, like the tone, the color, and like the emotion and characters, the characteristics of like a particular section, that kind of thing. So it ended up being helpful.
Oh, that's good. The next question is, do you have any thoughts on classical versus Baroque versus modern music? Is it sacrilegious or is it like inspiring?
Okay, so I don't know. God, I need to find you guys this. There's this hilarious. Okay, so there's this. I don't remember who it's by, but there's this one modern piece where there's like very, very specific stage instructions, and they include like bringing a bucket of hay on stage and feeding the piano. And then once the piano is completely fed, the piece is over. Like that kind of thing, I think is great for a laugh. I don't know how I feel about it exactly. Um, I'm more of a fan of like romantic and impressionist era composers. So I love Debussy, Ravel, Chopin, Rachmaninoff. I also really love Prokofiev. Um, and there's actually a lot of really, really awesome music that's been composed in the last few decades. Steve Reich is like one of my favorites now. Philip Glass also did a lot of amazing stuff. If you guys listen to this one piece by Steve Reich, it's like I think it's for like piano and like xylophone and voice, and it's like 47 minutes long or something like that. And I studied it in music history. And when I first heard about it, I was like, oh God, like here we go, right? And then I started listening to it like not on just like on repeat. And it's just like this wave, it's like this perpetuum mobile kind of composition where it's just eighth notes. The entire piece is eighth notes, but the voices come in at random times, and like the xylophone has this amazing like ostinato, and it's just like there's so much momentum, and the harmonies are just like shifting but just ever so slightly that you barely notice them until like the piece completely transforms. And I feel like I sound like a total nerd right now, but you guys should definitely check it out. It's just like this kind of like hypnotic music that you start listening to and then you realize that the piece is over.
Oh, I'll definitely have to listen to it after. And the last question we have is, has your music inspired your writing in any way?
So I've been taking screenwriting classes at Yale, and a lot of the professors have been really enthusiastic about like talking to me about like the structural similarities between musical composition and like writing a TV show pilot. So that's definitely helped a lot. And also, I guess just like the imaginative and creative aspect of it. Like I was taught to always play music with a story, so I used to make up stories like for all of my pieces, and that definitely helped a lot, especially since I write fantasy novels. And I guess the last thing that really made a difference, I think, in the way I work is just like that diligence and determination and the ability to focus for longer periods of time. Like writing a novel is kind of a headache, like especially since it's so long. Um, I I've met a lot of readers who are trying to write novels, and they'll be like, "Oh, I can only ever write like a 20,000 or it doesn't matter how many words, but I write the beginning of a story and then I'm like super excited and passionate about it, and then like a week later I move on to another, or like a day or the same day I move on to a new idea and I want to write something new. So for some reason, like the first book that I published, like when I started writing it, that was the first attempt at a novel I'd ever made, and I just stuck with it for like the entire book, which ended up like causing problems later on, and all of that fun revising and editing nonsense that happened. But I think that that really helped. So I guess you guys, like, just that ability to stick with something and learn it and care for it and practice and learn new pieces and continue to learn pieces is just like a really great skill that you'll be able to apply later in life.
Okay, well, thank you. So now, if anyone has a question, feel free to type it in the chat or unmute yourself and ask it.
Hi, I have a question.
Yeah.
So I know you've talked about how you used like your writing experience to help you develop like a sense of the story that you want your piece to convey, but are there any other ways that you've worked towards, like, I guess, a better understanding of the musicality of a certain piece and how you want to approach that performance?
Yeah, for sure. I think I actually have one friend who has this very interesting approach to learning music where he sits down with the score and he memorizes it before he ever touches the piano. And I think he's crazy, but anyway, that's but it seems to work really, really well for him. That allows him to really understand and analyze the composer's decisions. I guess one of the reasons why I said it was so important for musicians just to like try composition even for fun, and something that I really learned through writing, is that, I mean, a lot, I would say almost every note, if not every note, is intentionally there for a reason. So you want to kind of understand like why those notes are there, right? Like you kind of have to put yourself in the composer's shoes, and that kind of allows you to have a better interpretation and a more truthful interpretation to the composer's original intentions. Um, Another thing I do is I listen to a lot of recordings. There are some people who are like that's like taboo, like never listen to another artist's recording before you learn the piece so you don't like copy them. I don't have that good of a memory, so like I don't think I'd be able to do that. And a lot of the times, like I think the better way to go about it is if you listen to an interpretation and you hear something you really, really like, you understand, like you have to try and understand why it caught your attention, why you like it, and kind of apply that and integrate it into your own playing and studying of music. So those are kind of my strategies. Yeah, and I used to record myself and listen to myself play. Um, it was kind of cringy sometimes, but like the fact that it was cringy and I heard that it was cringy allowed me to go back and fix whatever I didn't like. So.
I just had a quick question. There's something to be said about like perfect pitch and being able to just like hear the music when reading a score. Do you like suggest that we should like definitely develop these skills, or how can we develop these skills?
I I would say that perfect pitch has helped me a lot in, especially when I'm performing and let's say I'm really nervous and I have like a memory slip. Um, my fingers won't know what's happening, like, but I can hear like what note I'm supposed to play next. So because of the perfect pitch, I'm able to play it. That's really helpful. And also, like for pianists, it's not so important when playing. For instrumentalists, like winds, like and strings, it's a little more important. I've definitely played with people who are who might be tone deaf, and you can really tell that like in their pitch and their tuning. um I also think that it really helps to develop like a just like a better appreciation and better ability to analyze music when you're listening to it and also when you're playing it. And it's also just like a fun skill to have in general. It does take like a little bit of work to develop it, but the only yeah I yeah I actually I boil water in my kettle, and it's like the sink, it makes it like a really a pain in the neck to look at when the water fills up the tank. So I just fill it up until I hear like a G, and then the water is like perfectly on the line. So that kind of stuff is pretty useful.
Or what about like being able to like read, like hear the music after reading a score? Is that, I guess that is perfect pitch, but like hearing the voices come together, is that something that is like difficult to develop, or does it just come naturally?
I don't think actually a lot of people do that. I can like if you give me a recording and I listen to it, I can play it back like a pop song or something by ear. I don't usually like hear the voices when I'm reading a score because it, I don't know if I don't know whether it's just because I haven't developed that or I'm just often wrong so that when I hear it, it's like totally different. If it's like one voice, I can, and like maybe two voices, I can do it. But more than that, it's just a mess in my head. It would be like imagining like I guess people talking in a movie or a TV show or having a conversation, but all talking at the same time. So, and just like imagining every single word of what they're saying at the same time. So it doesn't really work.
Yeah. So does anyone else have any other questions? Yes, we have a question. How much time do you get between knowing when you're performing to going on stage? And how do you deal with stage fright?
So it really depends. Sometimes I'll get a call and they'll be like, "Oh, are you free this Friday? Like can you come and play?" And then sometimes it'll be like a year in advance. So that really depends between knowing when you're performing to going on stage. Yeah, I guess if that if, I don't know if that answered the question. And how do you deal with stage fright? So uh like I said earlier, a lot of it is just I think a lot of it is psychological. Um, if you're just very nervous and you know, you continue thinking like, oh no, everything, like the world's ending, I'm, you know, I don't want to do this anymore. You know, you're just kind of setting yourself up for being even more nervous and getting more anxious. So like just take a moment and like reflect on all of the work you've done, all the practice you've done, and just like a lot of the times what I'll tell myself is like, you worked really hard for this, you're definitely ready, like you put in all of the hours, and that means you can just rely on, you know, all of that work you did. So that usually helps a lot. Yeah. And also like clapping really loudly, just like clapping your hands. I used to do that backstage, especially when my hands were cold. It would like just help get like the blood circulation running. And also if it's like really quiet backstage, it's kind of nerve-wracking because you can only hear your own thoughts. But if you just like, I'm not saying like clap as, but just like random, just like, you know, get your body loose and ready, and also make sure your hands are warm and that kind of thing. It's a little specific to piano, but hopefully it helps with other instruments as well.
If there are, oh, yes, one more question. How do you deal with when you're approached with doubt, adversity, or discouragement from others or yourself?
Oh, okay. So, um, okay. So this has happened a lot. I guess one of the things that I've been very lucky to have is just like people, supportive people around me, whether that's other musicians or my professors or my own parents. It it I guess especially when I went into publishing, there was like a lot of moments where, like, of course, like any, even your most favorite book ever will always have criticism. There will always be someone who doesn't like it, but there's always people who will appreciate it and love it. And I guess I was used to kind of like knowing, you know, these, you know, Russian professors who are like really strict and stern and can, you know, be very, very, I guess honest is the nice way to put it. There's like one professor who's like notorious for making every single student who plays for him cry, which I don't think is a nice thing to do. I'm just gonna put that out there. But like being exposed to that from a very young age kind of like hardened me a lot. And you just have to kind of have confidence in, you know, what you're doing. There will be performances you have that definitely aren't as good as others. You will go to competitions and not win first. Like that happens all the time, even to musicians who end up being like the most celebrated and esteemed and respected musicians in like in this century or something like that. Like I think Yo-Yo Ma like never went to any competitions at all and that kind of thing. So there's also a point when you have to recognize when like things are getting like toxic, unless there are people around you who are just kind of targeting you for the sake of either like, you know, maybe they're jealous or maybe they're just nasty people. And you have to learn to distance yourself from that and separate yourself from that, and just, you know, build a network and like a community around yourself of people who support you and who you can support in return, and just like grow like that. That's the best way, I think.
Oh, that was really well said. Next question from Rowan. If you were to go to a music university in Canada, what would it be? And what teacher did you have at Taylor Academy?
So I had three teachers actually. One of them was only for a year. So my first teacher, who I was with for, I think, from the age of 16 to like 12, 11 or something like that, was Arsha Louise Nersessian. She's an amazing teacher. She's still teaching there. She was like my grandma, basically. She was so loving, so supportive. Still very supportive, and emails me all the time, and we still keep in touch. My other teacher was Jim Agneson, who's the dean of the Glenn Gould School. He was also a fantastic teacher. Really, 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 I think, probably one of the most influential teachers I've had. in all of like in 15 years. And then I was also with Dr. Michael Berkowski. They're all still teaching there. And he was also a wonderful teacher. And I think I would recommend the Glenn Gould School. I think I mean the facilities are amazing, much better than a lot of the music schools in general, like especially having been in the States now, like I can definitely say that I was very, very lucky to have the education that I had at the RCM. In fact, like I think the classes that I took at the academy, some of them were a lot more difficult than the ones that Juilliard offered. So I was like, when I went to Juilliard, I placed out of almost every single class, which was crazy. Um, so I definitely recommend RCM. Uh, yeah, I'm biased though, so I don't know how fair that is.
Well, thank you. Do you have any other questions? Oh, yes. What do you hope to achieve, and where do you see yourself after completing your bachelor?
I'm currently working on my fourth book. I just switched agents. I fired my last agent because things were not working so well, and so I love my current agent, and we're hoping to get this book submitted to publishers in the next month or so. Or probably not in the. I need to finish writing it first, so my first goal right now is like to finish writing that book. I'm also working on some TV scripts and film scripts that hopefully will go somewhere. I'd also love to find a way to incorporate like my classical music education and background into some more mainstream forms of media. I think it's very hard these days to find like really, really good soundtracks that are very fundamental to the movies and films that we actually watch. So like, I mean, there are lots of great soundtracks out there, but the really good stuff is like very hard to find. Like I remember I saw this meme where it was like they just put this like random superhero music from like Transformers and like Avengers, and like they all like mix them, and you literally can't tell the difference. There's nothing like particularly unique about any of those soundtracks, and they're not like very special to the film. So I'd like to in the future you know, make movies maybe where the music is, you know, that special something that makes the film magical and memorable.
If there are no more questions, what are some final words of advice to young musicians?
Definitely, definitely, like I said, be really, really proud of yourself and what you're doing, and always just be open and willing to listen and enthusiastic to play. Like grab your opportunities as soon as you get them, and if there aren't any, seek them out. Like I'm a believer that luck favors the bold and the prepared. And so, you know, if there's something you want, actively seek it out, and there are always people who will want to hear you play. Like organize your own concert series, perform with your friends, like make friendships with other musicians, and yeah, just be open. That's the big thing.
Well, thank you, Coco. I can truly say that I at least learned a lot and was really inspiring talking with you. Thank you so much for coming and talking with us. We really appreciate it, and we're truly honored. And we wish you the best with all your future endeavors, with music, with all your future novels. And we look forward to hearing about you and speaking with you in the future.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, guys. I hope that I can hear all of you play someday. That would be really nice.